And furthermore, the real objective for me, and you'll notice this the more that you listen to me and watch my videos, is that I'm focused on efficiency. Because to be elite means that you are productive. And productivity and efficiency to me are the same thing, at least at their peak, right? Both of them are focused on getting the most work done with the least amount of energy. And that's not to say to be lazy, it's just to say that we need to cut corners where it makes sense to cut corners. It's not that we're trying to be lazy, it's that we're focused on conserving our energy, making the most of our energy. It's actually the most responsible way to be, is to be efficient, to be elite, to be productive. And that's what maybe is the key to choosing when and when not to crash out, whether or not it's effective in the long term, whether or not this makes the most sense. Because there are times whenever I've dealt with what some people would call narcissists, or what I maybe would just call like immature behavior. And I realized, oh, well, arguing with this person is not going to get me anywhere in the short term or the long term, or anywhere positive. The only place it's going to get me in the short term is a place of frustration. It's just going to make me upset, make me mad. And in the long term, nothing's going to change. I'm just going to continue doing that. Well, I guess in the long term, I'm going to waste more energy that I wouldn't otherwise waste, right? And that's ineffective. That's something that I shouldn't be doing. It's a waste of energy. It's irresponsible. It's not honorable to waste energy like that. And so why would I fight with somebody like that? Why would I argue with somebody like that? It's better to just remove myself from the situation. If there's a job, or there's somebody like a client that I'm working with for design service, or there's a manufacturer that I'm working with for soNeu, and they don't reply fast enough for me, they're not clear with their communication, their quality of work is weak sauce, I could either A, crash out on them and argue with them and say, hey, you should have had it done like this. You said you were going to have it done like this. How come you haven't responded to me like this and at this time, and so on. Or I could just be, hey, realize, oh, look, this guy is not somebody that I want to deal with in the long term. He's already not doing things right in the short term, and I don't see it getting better. Maybe I need to just find another person to deal with, because we obviously are not the same type of people. We don't have the same type of values, right? That would require more energy in the short term, but in the long term, it would save me energy, if not gain me energy. Whereas crashing out on somebody, trying to get them to do the things that I want them to do, would again cost me energy in the short term, but it might not gain or maintain my energy in the long term. It might just be a waste the whole way through the line, and it might not ever uh, switch up. It might just continue to go trend down. It may not trend up again. And that's what it is. What is going to be effective in the long term? Because in the short term, we're going to have to use some energy to either find a new person to deal with, a new place to work at, a new car to drive, a new industry to build my business in, a new person to date, whatever, what happened. And if I decide to crash out on them or invest in them and try to get them to change their behavior in a way that is more aligned with what I'm trying to do with my life or my relationship or what my business or my career or whatever, you know, either way, you're going to have to invest some energy, but you just need to focus on the long-term thing. What is the most effective? Because it could work out either way. Sometimes crashing out, or what has become in this conversation, investing in somebody, sometimes it can work out. For example, the Patriots, right?
Patriots, whenever they were winning all those Super Bowls, were notorious for promoting from within. They had a program and a culture and a system that they were able to run for years and years that made them very effective. They were able to win. I think they won the most Super Bowls in the 2000s out of all the other franchises with the same amount of time and probably, I think, you know, less money maybe. Point is, they promoted from within. They didn't go out and get their free agents from other franchises. They had a program, they ran the system, and they trained their guys to be able to play within the system. That way, the system is what's the valuable thing, not the individual players. Maybe a few individual players like Tom Brady and a couple of keystone players, but for the most part, the skill players, Danny Amendola, Wes Welker, Julian Edelman, Chris Hogan, a couple like random like names, Brandon LaFell. I think this is just Brandon Cooks, probably like the biggest wide receiver they had at the time, or at the end of that time, I guess. But that's an example of crashing out or investing in somebody working out for the better, actually being the effective thing in the long term. But it could also be ineffective. And instead of building a system and doing all that stuff, building your whole team around a few franchise players might be the most effective thing to do in the long term. Like, for example, the Miami Heat. They took the opposite approach. They didn't go Patriots route. We're going to build a program and build this team of players that are developing. And, instead they just said, no, let's build around what we already have, Dwayne Wade. Let's get LeBron. Let's get Chris Bosh, and let's win some rings like that. And they did that. And now we have, Kevin Durant on the Warriors, and then we have Kevin Durant on the Suns, and now we have Karl Anthony Towns with Jalen Brunson and the rest of the guys that they got. And then we also got it just basically like birthed like the super teams, right? But ultimately the goal was efficiency and productivity and winning the most amount of rings in the least amount of time with the same amount of energy that everybody else got. But there's two approaches. You either invest in the team that you got, you crash out, or you take accountability and you go somewhere else, or you build a team around a few, major players from other places, right? So ultimately, if you're trying to decide between A, crashing out / investing in someone else, or B, taking accountability / investing in yourself, you have to ask which one is the most effective in the long term and which one can you actually execute. Because they both can be the most effective and the least effective. But the key is whether or not you can execute the one that you want.